Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling one of modern philosophy's most fascinating and, let's be honest, difficult concepts from Slavoj Žižek. We're going to go deep, right into the engine room of our beliefs, to figure out what really makes us tick.
Okay, so let's start with a puzzle, and it's one you've probably felt in your own life. Ever have that feeling where you know something is, well, irrational or maybe even wrong, but you do it anyway? You know that endless consumerism is kind of empty, right? And it's not great for the planet. But there you are scrolling through shopping apps. Or maybe you know deep down that a certain political promise is hollow, but you find yourself nodding along anyway. So what's going on there? Right. And for the philosopher Slavoj Žižek, this isn't just you being a hypocrite. No. He argues that this exact contradiction, this feeling of I know better but I'm doing it anyway, that's the fundamental logic of how ideology works today. It's not that our beliefs and our actions are clashing. It's that the clash itself is the ideology.
So to really get this, we've got to throw out the old way of thinking about ideology. You know, the classic idea of false consciousness, that we're all just like brainwashed and walking around with the wrong ideas in our heads. Žižek says, nope, it's way more subtle than that. The real illusion isn't in what you think, it's in what you do. It's in your actions, which keep a whole system running, even a system you might say you hate.
Okay, let's dive into this. Our first big reveal is that ideology isn't some abstract set of beliefs floating around in your head. It's a physical, material practice. It's something we do. And Žižek has a great name for this, fetishistic ideology. Now, think about money. We all know a dollar bill is just a piece of paper, right? It's cotton and ink. It has no magical inherent value. We know that in our heads, but we still act as if it does. We work for it, we save it, we stress about it. Our actions treat that piece of paper as if it has this amazing objective power. See, we're fetishists in our actions, even if we're cynics in our thoughts. Here's another great way to think about it, paraphrasing the theorist Terry Eagleton. Imagine a park bench, and it's got a sign on it that says whites only. Now you can sit on that bench and think to yourself, I'm not racist, I don't believe in this nonsense. But does it matter what's in your head? Nope. The very act of sitting down, of following the rule, means you've participated in that racist ideology. The ideology isn't in your head. The ideology is in the bench.
And that's the crucial point right there. Our real beliefs, the ones that actually matter, aren't the quiet opinions we have in our own minds. They're written in the things we do, the social rituals we perform every single day. Our entire social reality is basically built on these illusions that we all agree to act out together.
Okay, so this begs a pretty big question, right? If it's not our conscious thoughts driving the bus, then what is? Why do we keep playing along, acting out these scripts we say we don't even believe in? Well, the answer, according to Žižek, and he's pulling from psychoanalysis here, lies somewhere deeper. It's down in the unconscious. It's all about a hidden script, one that shapes how we see reality itself. Now, Žižek argues that we all operate based on an unconscious fantasy. And hold on, this isn't about daydreaming about winning a lottery. This is more like a fundamental filter, a pair of glasses we don't know we're wearing. This fantasy organizes our world, it smooths over all the messy contradictions, and it basically teaches us what to want and how to want it. It's the secret story that makes our chaotic social reality feel like it all makes sense and tells us exactly where we fit in.
And here's the really weird part. We actually get a kind of twisted, hidden pleasure out of being stuck in this loop. There's a special term for it in psychoanalysis, jouissance. Think of it like when you have a sore tooth, and you just can't stop poking it with your tongue. It hurts, but there's a weird satisfaction in it, right? That's jouissance. It's this intense, excessive enjoyment we get from our own suffering or our own rules, and it's a huge part of what keeps us hooked on our ideology.
All right, we're getting to the absolute heart of the matter now. We've got this idea of ideology in our actions and this unconscious fantasy writing the script. But what powers it? What gives that fantasy script its juice?
Yeah, what is the secret ingredient? What is this mysterious X factor that holds the whole structure together and makes us follow the rules of the game?
Okay, here we go. The psychoanalyst Jacques Lacan called this thing objet petit a. Now, this is a famously difficult concept, so bear with me. The most important thing to get is that it's not the thing you think you want. It's not the fancy car or the perfect job. Instead, it's the mysterious gap, the void, the little something that's missing that makes you want things in the first place.
It's the cause of your desire. It's not pulling you forward like a goal, it's pushing you from behind, this constant little irritation that keeps you searching. The best way to wrap your head around this is with an example from art. Think of that famous painting by Hans Holbein, The Ambassadors. When you look at it straight on, you see these two wealthy, powerful guys. But then there's this weird, stretched out smudge at the bottom. It makes no sense. But if you walk to the side of the painting and look at it from a sharp angle, if you look awry, as Žižek would say, that weird smudge suddenly snaps into focus. It's a skull, a perfect 3D-looking skull. And that right there, that's exactly how the sublime object of ideology works. It's some ordinary, everyday thing, a smudge in our social reality, that when you look at it through the distorted lens of our ideology suddenly seems incredibly important. It gets elevated to fill that central void, that objet ja, and it suddenly looks like the secret key that explains everything. Now, we have to be careful with the word sublime. Žižek isn't talking about the sublime you get from looking at a giant mountain or a raging ocean, that kind of awesome, terrifying beauty. No, this is different. This is the shocking sublimity of finding a huge, transcendent idea embodied in some, well, miserable little thing. It's the idea that the answer to life, the universe, and everything isn't some grand cosmic truth, but is instead located in this one humble physical object that stands in for all the stuff we just can't explain. And this sublime object can literally be anything. For example, in the logic of anti-Semitism, the figure of the Jew is elevated into this sublime object that supposedly explains all of society's problems, from economic crashes to cultural decay. Or in some free market ideologies, the market becomes this invisible, godlike force that, if we just trust it, will solve everything. These things become placeholders, mundane things elevated to explain away all the messy, unexplainable contradictions of reality. Žižek tells this great old Soviet joke to explain it. There's a painting called Lenin in Warsaw. A visitor comes to the gallery, looks at the painting, and sees Lenin's wife in bed with a young party official. Confused, the visitor asks the guide, "This is a beautiful painting, but where is Lenin?" And the guide replies, "Lenin is in Warsaw." See? The whole point of the painting, the thing that gives it its meaning and its scandalous little story, is Lenin's absence. He's the missing piece that secretly structures the whole scene. And that's exactly what the sublime object does in our reality. So, wow, if we're all caught in this web, right? This fantasy propped up by some random sublime object and fueled by this weird secret enjoyment, is there any way out? I mean, how do you break a spell like that? Žižek's answer is something he calls traversing the fantasy. Now, this doesn't mean you can just step outside of fantasy into some pure reality. He thinks that's impossible. Instead, it means you confront your fantasy head-on. You identify with it, you take it to its logical conclusion until you see how absurd it is. It's that aha moment when you finally realize that the sublime object, the thing you thought was the key to everything, is really just a mask for, well, nothing, an empty space. And when you do that, you don't magically escape ideology altogether, but you do break its spell. You break its hypnotic hold over you. You start to see that the way things are isn't the only way they could be. You realize all those big answers and scary enemies that your fantasy gives you, they're just props on a stage. And once you see that, a little bit of space opens up. Space to think, to imagine, and maybe to act in a totally new way. And that leaves us with a final, pretty provocative thought to chew on. Take a look at your own world, your own life. What's the thing? What's that seemingly ordinary person, or idea, or object that's been secretly promoted to become the cause of all your desires, all your frustrations, all your hopes? In other words, what's the sublime object that's structuring your reality?